Dragon Ball Super Superhero released 3 years ago and opened to near unanimous praise. And at the time, I felt the same. Sure, it wasn't nearly as good as Broly, and I had some things I didn't like about it, but overall, it was a pretty good movie. But as some time passed, I decided to give the movie a rewatch. And, it's kinda awful.
On the other hand, when I saw this movie, I felt very mixed walking out of the theater. Overall, I thought it was pretty decent, but there were numerous things that I didn't like. The ending for me also left a really bad taste in my mouth. I've since warmed up to this movie a bit more, but I'm still not the biggest fan of superhero.
So to us, this movie is truly a culmination of everything that is wrong with modern Dragon Ball. The tonally inappropriate and out-of-place gag humor, the inconsistently annoying character writing, and the performative fan service with no substance or sense of what makes Dragon Ball special. This video is also going to contain spoilers for the entire movie, so here is your only spoiler warning. And without further ado, let's talk about Dragon Ball. To start off, I want to talk about things in this movie that I actually like, because there's not a lot of them. First of all, the intro recap in this movie is really cool. It's quick, the visuals are awesome, and it really builds up the hype for the beginning of this movie. We both also like Piccolo in this movie. Orange Piccolo is a cool and well-deserved transformation, and he has some of the only good gag humor in this movie. His plushie obsession, the way he holds his iPhone, and the way he flies this plane are all fucking hilarious in my opinion. We also love how dynamic the camera movement is in some of these shots. I personally hate the CG animation and hope they never use it again, but the way that they use the camera movement in these 3D environments is really cool and causes some of my only enjoyment in this movie. And I like the Red Ribbon Army's base. I think it looks pretty cool. But don't worry, I'll talk about the Red Ribbon Army more later. And now it's time to actually dive into superhero. And to start, this movie's boring as fuck. This is something I didn't experience on my first watch, and I actually thought the movie's pacing was pretty good, but this movie put me to sleep both times I rewatched it. When you go into this movie understanding the plot and characters already, the first bit of this movie feels so unnecessarily dragged out and borderline skippable. A good example of what I mean is the first scene of the movie with Magenta and Dr. Hedo. This scene is just two people rambling about who they are and their motivations so that we can get to know these characters, which is not a bad thing necessarily. But when neither of these characters are interesting or complex, combined with the fact that the scene is long as hell, it starts to get a little tedious. Magenta is just an evil businessman, and Dr. Hedo is a little evil freak who for some reason likes superheroes, even though he's literally evil and the grandson of Dr. Gero. There's literally nothing else to these characters, and they somehow drag this scene out for 10 minutes. There's a few good scenes in this earlier section of the movie, and when the plot starts happening, this stops being an issue. But this problem persists for the entire first 45 minutes of the movie, which is like half of it.
To keep in order of the movie, I want to point out that this is genuinely my favorite scene in the entire movie. Pan and Piccolo's dynamic was for us a big highlight of this film. Not only was it the most enjoyable part for me, it was able to harken back to the nostalgia of Piccolo and Gohan's training and eventual bonding without it feeling forced or like we were seeing the same thing again, which also highlights Piccolo's character development since the start of Z. However, we have to talk about a problem I have with pretty much the entire film. Most of the fights, in my opinion, aren't great, and to be honest, are not up to my standards when it comes to Dragon Ball. And this fight with Piccolo and Gamma 2 is a great example of what I mean. There are some cool camera movements like this shot of Piccolo, and the overall motion is captured well, but as a whole, this didn't do it for me, and is at times kind of shitty. As Nathan mentioned, the camera is used very well to give scale and swift movement, and he wasn't lying. There are some really cool shots and moments here and there that I genuinely enjoy, but that's what I'm trying to get at. This movie seems to follow a sort of cycle. It shows me something cool that I like, and then it annoys or pisses me off for 10 to 15 minutes, and then I get to see something cool again. And this cycle keeps going, baby, because fucking Korn appearance, yeah! But in this same scene lies one of, if not my biggest problem with this movie. Piccolo asked Dende to unlock his potential like Guru did for Gohan on Namek, but Dende is useless and can't. So Dende pours tap water on Shenron's statue to upgrade the eternal dragon. I'm not joking. I'm not kidding. That's how he fixes the problem. And I know that sounds stupid and almost like a nitpick, but to me, it's not. I feel modern Dragon Ball has no reverence to what makes this series special. Shenron is treated like a pet, and Bulma canonically abuses the Dragon Balls every year for cosmetic surgery and trivial nonsense. This problem isn't exclusive to Shenron in the Dragon Balls. It honestly impacts the characters more. Bulma abusing the Dragon Balls is played off as a gag and is supposed to be a joke, but in service of the Looney Tunes gag humor, the character nuances are stripped away and you're left with a hollow shell of what it once was. That's what happened to Goku in Super. Now he's just stupid because it's funny and convenient to write. Bulma's role in this movie is to use all of the wishes on her fat ass so Goku and Vegeta don't get involved and to be a bitch to everyone. But that's okay. It's just a fan favorite character from the first chapter of the series. No big deal. Every character suffers from this. Krillin is included in this movie just so he can be made fun of. Beerus is attracted to Chilai. Ew. Majin Buu is still sleeping. Isn't this just so funny, guys? Look, Bulma has boobs and she's old. Yuck! Don't you like it when Dragon Ball is funny for YouTube short slop content? Cause I sure do! And Goten and Trunks, the prominent next generation of Saiyans who have been grossly underutilized for over a decade, are in this movie to blue ball the audience into thinking it's their turn. The half and quarter Saiyans, as well as Oob, are the logical evolution of this story, but they've been shafted in favor of the Goku show. For a lot of people, that was the appeal of this movie. It focused on Gohan and Piccolo, fan favorites who often get overlooked in favor of Goku and Vegeta. And this would have been the perfect opportunity to focus on the other Z Warriors in addition to the spotlight being on Piccolo and Gohan, because these characters simply being here is just not enough. But to be honest, Nathan has much more to say on this movie, so I want to talk about one more scene I really liked before I hand it off. The scene where the Red Ribbon Army tries to kidnap Pan was a standout for me for many reasons. Pan, without hesitation, takes out the stranger who tries to abduct her effortlessly, and Pan assures her hot teacher that she's never met this man. And when another man runs up, she almost instantly senses Piccolo's energy and realizes that it's him, something we see in a later scene Gohan not be able to do. Nonetheless, this moment is a standout and one of my favorites.
As Jamie has been pointing out, the writing in this movie is, in our opinion, mostly bad. And not just in the bad gag humor or the unfaithful and inconsistent character portrayals, but in the plot and story as a whole. To me, this plot feels weirdly convenient and loose. And that all stems from the Red Ribbon Army's awful plan. The Red Ribbon Army in this movie is so bad. Not only do they lack any sense of competency, structure, or even motivation, but their entire plan feels like it was set up for the Z Warriors to win, and it honestly doesn't even make any sense. So at the beginning of the movie, Magenta has control of the Red Ribbon Army, and he finds out that the grandson of Dr. Gero is getting out of prison. And so logically, he decides to go recruit him so that he can make new androids for the Red Ribbon Army. But then Hedo's like, actually, I like superheroes and shit, so I don't want to like work for the bad guys. And already, this makes no goddamn sense to me. Why does he like superheroes? They literally just pointed out in this scene that he murders people and steals dead bodies. Why would this guy like superheroes? But to get past this, Magenta just lies to him about Bulma being evil and bribes him with fucking Oreos, and then he just goes, all right, I'll just forget that you're definitely the bad guy for half the movie and I'll just work for you, I guess. What? Are you evil or not? Why can't this dude just make up his mind? It genuinely doesn't make sense to me why he ends up working for the Red Ribbon Army. Because Dr. Hedo goes into this conversation knowing Magenta's whole game and understood what he was there to do. He even spied on him before Magenta came to see him, so to me it doesn't make any logical sense how Hedo would be manipulated so easily. But don't worry, him and the Gammas realize they're being manipulated and turn good right when the plot needs them to. Yippee! And with that, I want to talk about the rest of the villains in this movie. And we only have 2 more to go. Surely Dr. Hedo is the worst villain that we'll get. Not only is this the dumbest thing I've ever looked at, but Magenta's character writing is honestly just as bad, if not worse, than Dr. Hedo's. And that is because unlike the other villains in this movie, he knows that he's evil. So because of that fact, he is the evil mastermind of this movie. So therefore, he must have very solid motivations and possibly even an overarching plan that he's thought about for most of his life. And he just doesn't. I'm not kidding. He's just evil and wants more stuff, I guess? I don't know. He has one scene exclaiming that he wants to return the Red Ribbon Army to its former glory, but for the rest of the movie, he acts like he's already accomplished this goal. He's also just straight up not smart. You would think if he's trying to build an evil empire ruled with the powerful force of obedient androids, that he wouldn't let the person making those androids design them to naturally be superheroes who strive to do good and save people, while also giving them free will? Don't you think that might come to bite you in the ass in the long run? I could be being too hard on these villains, but I'm somebody who really enjoys themes of manipulation and deception. And the way that it's done in this movie is so convoluted and sloppy. But what's really egregious is that neither of them are even the worst villain in this movie. This one is very interesting for me because this reveal of Cell being in the movie is where almost all of my hype was when watching this. Sure, I wanted to see Gohan and Piccolo, but when I saw this fucking test tube in the trailer, I knew for a fact that Cell was in there, and I was hyped. The entire time I was watching this movie, I was just itching for the reveal. And to my surprise, I hated it. All of that hype, all of that nostalgia for the Cell arc and a Gohan that we used to know disappeared. And all because of one simple writing decision. All because Cell can't fucking talk. I was so excited to see a rematch between Gohan and Cell, not only to cap off the themes of childhood trauma with Gohan and fully give him a character arc, but also because I just craved some good old-fashioned Dragon Ball. So some very simple fan service of bringing back an old villain just felt so right. But that's not even close to what this movie gives us. We get a giant fucking gorilla flailing around for 20 minutes while a group of characters I know shoot ki blasts at said fucking gorilla, who ultimately do nothing just so Gohan can get a bullshit power up and save everyone. I know it may seem like a really small thing and not that big of a deal, but this simple change of making him a big monster instead of just Cell again made this final fight so much worse in every possible way, and in my opinion, absolutely ruined the climax for me on my first watch. But that's all I got for the villains. They're boring, badly written, and to be frank, an embarrassment to witness. And with that, it's now time to get into the big meatworm of the video. Possibly my biggest problem with this movie that I've been intentionally avoiding this whole video. And that is how this movie handles the character of Gohan. Gohan has been one of the best and most important characters in Dragon Ball. But this movie and modern Dragon Ball as a whole have completely ruined the character of Gohan. His deep and complex feelings about his role in the world led to some of the best character work in all of Dragon Ball, and that ended up causing his fights to have so much more passion and meaning behind them. And Super takes this framework and decides, yeah, this guy, he's just gonna be a guy with a job.
Shut your stupid.
Seeing him repeatedly not train or do anything and then come to the fight just so he can get his ass beat is such a disservice to this character. And at this point, I would call it blatant character assassination. Of course, I completely understand that a big point of his character in Z is that he is not like Goku and he doesn't like to fight. So a lot of people will hear this and use it to defend this lazy way to take this character. But in my fully honest opinion, I don't think that really matters. If you are so powerful that your potential outweighs Goku and you live in a world where there's a new world-ending threat every month, I think you have a moral obligation and duty to hone that power and protect what you love. I would even say that it is absolutely selfish for this man to not only abandon the world, but abandon his family simply because he wants to have a job. Which, may I mention, he doesn't even need. His wife is one of the richest people on the planet. As someone who has dreams and passions, I completely understand the desire to pursue them. But at the same time, as a person, you have obligations and responsibilities. So to me, I see no reason why he can't just be a superhero and train, be a dad, and study at the same time. Wait a minute. I just described fucking Spider-Man. He fucking does it, why can't you? Honestly, I would say because of his rich wife that there's even more reason that he could do it. Realistically, he can just quit his job and study independently on his free time. Peter Parker can't do that. That motherfucker has bills to pay. And it hurts even more when you take into account that Gohan already learned this lesson in the Boo saga and Super just decided to regress his character for no reason at all. And this movie is clearly them trying to course correct Gohan's character, but this is just such a lazy and lame way to do it. Gohan goes through no sort of character growth at all and goes from being so weak that he can't wear Piccolo's weighted clothes to being stronger than Goku. But yeah, the character of Gohan has legit been in shambles since the beginning of Super, and at this point, I'm gonna go insane if I keep talking about him. But as for Superhero, there's not much else for us to say. It's not one of the worst pieces of media ever made. We just don't fuck with it. When you think about it, my favorite Dragon Ball movie, Super Broly, does a lot of the things we bitched about in this video. It has a bloated intro, the plot was derived from performative fan service, it has gag humor, it writes out characters from the story, but that movie does it in a way that's actually good and feels like Dragon Ball, which is something I cannot say when talking about Superhero. At the time of making this video, a new Dragon Ball announcement is coming soon, and with One Piece now being seasonal for the first time in 25 years, a lot of people, myself included, are speculating either a Super Season 2 or a remake of Super. And if they remake Super for the sake of being more in line to Toriyama's original manga, then we are all for it. But if it's going to be a movie of the Moro arc or a complete redo of Super, please keep that shit. The Moro arc is genuinely the best Dragon Ball arc since Boo, and this arc is meant to be told in a serialized nature, so I am confident that a movie format would absolutely ruin it. And a complete redo of Super is 100% the worst possible option to go with. At this point, they have put so much into Super that going back on all of this development is not only disrespectful to its original creators, but absolutely cowardly. Despite all of its flaws, Super is not completely unsalvageable, and there are many things in this story that have great potential. The Goku Black arc, Frieza's character development after Resurrection F, Broly, the entire Moro arc, and these earlier arcs in Super could theoretically be mostly fixed by remaking them. The Super manga, despite its flaws, is pretty cool, and reading it makes me realize that a lot of the things I dislike about Dragon Ball recently probably aren't even from its original creators. And I would be deeply saddened if Toriyama and Toyotaro's vision gets stomped out by corporate greed. We were originally going to do a part about Daima in this video, but we decided that we would most likely be making another video about modern Dragon Ball in the future, so we're gonna save it for that. If you do want a more in-depth video about modern Dragon Ball, I highly recommend A Very Bad But Sad Boys video on Resurrection F. He goes very in-depth and made a much better video than I. And with that, we are gonna give Dragon Ball Super Superhero a collective 4 out of 10. Also, one final nitpick. Why did Gamma 2, fade into dust? He's a robot. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And check out my Twitch if you want to come chill and watch me play some games. I'm in a bit of an Overwatch phase right now, but I don't limit myself to that game. And if you aren't able to make the streams, I upload them to NaterVODs. There's also, of course, my original channel, but I'm not uploading on that as of right now, so don't expect any new videos there. But you should go watch the videos there anyway. Please.